Welcome to From Manuscript to Ministry, created and produced by Elder William Moore, the podcast where faith meets the written word. Each week, your hosts David and Martha dive into powerful, self-published books by Christian authors who are boldly using their God-given voices to impact the kingdom. Whether you're an aspiring writer, a reader seeking spiritual growth, or a ministry leader in search of authentic resources, this is your space to be inspired, encouraged, and equipped. Let's explore today's featured book and uncover the life-changing message behind the manuscript.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to take some really complex ideas, deep research, and, sometimes surprisingly powerful source material and just pull out the wisdom you can use right now.
Right. You're here because you want that insight, that shortcut into understanding things like identity, potential, self-worth, without having to, read a dozen books.
Exactly. Our mission is to give you that actionable knowledge, the stuff that makes you better informed, faster. And today, we are going deep, really deep.
We are. We're focusing on a single, I'd almost say explosive idea about how we see ourselves, how we label ourselves.
And our source material is really interesting. It's very focused. We're diving into excerpts from a devotional series called God's Greeting, Seeing Potential, Not Past.
And that series, it really centers its entire analysis on concepts from William Moore's work, from ordinary to extraordinary. So it's a very specific lens we're using.
So this isn't just about, historical facts. We're looking for a profound shift in perspective. Our mission today is to figure out how an external declaration of potential can, fundamentally rewrite the story we tell ourselves about our past.
And we're jumping right into the engine of this whole discussion. It's a quote from William Moore that is, it's the entire foundation for everything we're about to talk about.
Get ready for it. It's the hook.
It really is. Moore argues, and get this, before Gideon ever led an army, God called him a mighty warrior. Sometimes God speaks to our potential, not our past.
Okay, let's just stop there for a second. Potential, not our past. Let's really unpack that.
We have to.
Because that idea, it stands in, complete opposition to almost every single metric our modern lives run on, right? Professionally, socially, everything.
Everything. We are judged by resumes. We're judged by credit scores, by our track record, our social media history. Our past, for all intents and purposes, is our identity.
That's how we see it. It's our data. So to suggest that some external authority, some voice, can just bypass all of that history, all of that data.
And just declare a future identity that somehow supersedes your current reality.
That's it. That is the central kind of mind-bending nugget we really have to explore today.
It's the ultimate challenge to how we perceive ourselves, isn't it? If you accept this premise, even just for this conversation, you have to acknowledge something really uncomfortable.
Not yet.
That your current assessment of yourself, which, let's be honest, is probably heavily weighted toward your recent failures or those insecurities you've held onto for years, is simply inaccurate.
So you're saying my own self-view is fake news?
It's based on an outdated ledger sheet, a ledger that this concept says has already been dismissed. So we have to understand the mechanism behind what the source calls this divine contradiction.
And the story of Gideon is the perfect case study. It's this visceral illustration of that exact shift.
It's the perfect laboratory for this idea.
Okay, so to really feel the weight of this greeting, this mighty warrior title, we have to start by painting the scene. Who was Gideon when he heard this?
Right, because he wasn't, polishing his armor or strategizing with his generals.
Not even close. The context of his reality makes the greeting feel, as the devotional points out, almost absurd, laughable even.
The setting here, it's Judges chapter 6, and the scene is one of just utter collapse, total desperation. The Midianites had been oppressing Israel for 7 years.
This wasn't just like a political thing, right? It was much more fundamental than that.
Oh, it was existential. The oppression was agricultural. They would wait until the Israelites planted their crops, and then they'd sweep in like locusts and just destroy everything. The crops, the livestock, it drove the entire population into hiding in caves and strongholds.
So people are starving. They're terrified.
They're living under conditions of paralyzing survival-level fear. So Gideon isn't just, feeling a little anxious. He is actively concealing himself to survive.
And this is the detail. This is the crucial, almost cinematic detail that sells the entire contrast for me. He was threshing wheat, but he was doing it in a wine press.
And that one action tells you everything you need to know about his psychological state. his vulnerability.
Okay, so break that down for us. Why is that so significant? What's the difference?
Well, think about the standard practice. Threshing is how you separate the valuable grain from the useless chaff, right? To do that effectively, you need wind. Lots of it.
So you'd go somewhere high up, an open space.
Exactly. You'd go to the highest, most exposed, windiest hill you could find, a threshing floor. It's a loud, public, very visible activity. It's basically a giant sign that broadcasts to everyone for miles, hey, we have food here.
Which is the last thing you want to do when marauders are roaming the countryside looking to steal your food.
The absolute last thing. So Gideon, paralyzed by the fear that the Midianites would spot him and steal his family's tiny harvest, takes this very public act and moves it into a wine press.
Which is what? Exact.
It's the complete antithesis of a threshing floor. A wine press is usually a pit or a depression dug into the rock. It's a confined, secret, enclosed space. It's designed for crushing grapes, not for catching a breeze to separate grain.
So he's making his job 10 times harder.
100 times harder. He was choosing secrecy and perceived safety over any kind of agricultural efficiency. He was putting in so much more effort for a fraction of the yield, purely out of terror. He was shrinking his entire world down to the size of a hiding spot.
Wow. So his immediate reality is one of self-minimization, hiding,
Sure.
vulnerability. And then when he eventually speaks, we realize that his external reality, it just perfectly matches his internal view of himself.
It does. When he's finally confronted, what does he say? He describes his family as the poorest in his tribe, and then he says he is the least in his father's house.
He's the least of the least.
The least of the least, hiding in a pit, doing his work in the most inefficient way possible because he's terrified. That is our baseline. That's a before picture.
Okay, so that's the setup. Now here comes the shock. The moment in Judges 6.12, an emissary, an angel of the Lord, shows up. And he observes this utterly defeated, hiding, fearful man. This man steeped in inadequacy. And he delivers the greeting.
And notice what the greeting is not. It's not, hey, I know you're scared, but hang in there. It's not, don't worry, things will get better.
He doesn't acknowledge the current fearful state at all. He doesn't say, hey, you, the fearful man hiding in a wine press, I see you.
Not a chance. Instead, the greeting is that explosive contradiction that launched this whole idea. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior.
Mighty warrior. I mean, that's a title of courage, of leadership, of competence, of public visibility. Everything Gideon is not in that moment.
It's a complete identity transplant. He's going from the least of the least cowering in a pit to being labeled a powerful champion destined for victory.
This is the moment where the source material really digs in, calling it the divine contradiction.
And this contradiction is where the real insight is, because it forces us to distinguish between two different ways of seeing. The text argues really strongly that this divine vision saw his destiny, not his dysfunction.
Destiny versus dysfunction, I like that.
The dysfunction is the fear, the hiding, the inefficiency. It's all driven by his past traumas and his present scarcity. But the destiny, that's the fully realized potential, the purpose that hasn't been fulfilled yet.
So if we look at this through, say, a more psychological lens, this greeting is like a radical interruption of a negative feedback loop.
Absolutely. It's breaking a self-fulfilling prophecy. Gideon's past history of oppression and his current fear, they dictated his behavior. He was acting as if he were insignificant. The greeting forces him to confront a new authoritative label, and that creates this immediate, intense cognitive dissonance.
His brain must have just short-circuited. Mighty warrior does not compute.
It creates a cognitive crisis. Think about it. If someone whose opinion you deeply respect, an authority figure, a mentor, a boss, labels you a brilliant strategist, but you internally rehearse the script, I am a fraud, I am barely hanging on, something has to give.
You have two competing data points for your identity.
And the one from the external authoritative source completely overrides the empirical evidence of your current situation, your feelings, your messy reality.
This means that a true affirming vision for our lives, whether you interpret that as, a divine calling, or maybe just the guidance of a really great mentor who sees your hidden talent.
Right, or a coach.
It doesn't speak to the messy process of how you got where you are. It speaks exclusively to the finished product, to where you're going.
And that is instantly relevant to you, to our listener, because every one of us runs an internal inadequacy check, probably multiple times a day.
Oh, constantly. You look at that big presentation come up or a promotion you want to apply for, and where does your mind go?
Straight to the failure file. that disastrous project from 2 years ago, the degree you didn't finish, the personal struggles that make you feel scattered and unfocused. We feel unprepared, inadequate.
We feel like we're operating out of our own little wine press of anxiety.
Exactly. Yet the assertion from Moore's analysis is that despite those completely valid feelings of inadequacy, the authoritative label that's being applied to you, the mighty warrior label, is the more accurate one, even if the timing feels, ridiculously off.
We're being challenged to accept that we are called mighty, chosen, called favored, regardless of what our emotional bank account says on any given day.
But here's the difficulty, and we need to slow down here because this is the core struggle. We trust the evidence of our past failures much more readily than we trust a promise of future potential.
It's tangible. I can point to the failure, I have the receipts,
Yeah.
the potential is. It's just an idea.
Right. If I feel weak, if my last project failed, why on earth should I believe I'm a mighty warrior? This divine contradiction isn't just some feel-good phrase. It forces you, the listener, to make a fundamental and honestly a terrifying choice about your identity.
Am I the person hiding in the wine press, defined by my fear and my history?
Or are you the warrior who was just given a new identity and a new mission?
And the source material, by using this powerful story, it strongly urges us to accept that future powerful identity, even if it feels like self-delusion in the present moment.
And that acceptance is a huge hurdle, which brings us right to the heart of the psychological conflict. For most of us, when we look in the mirror, we don't naturally see a warrior.
No, we see the historical data, the list of screw-ups.
Exactly. When we take that mental inventory, we are focusing on the negative history. We're rehearsing the mistakes. We obsess over the missed opportunities, the times we failed to speak up, the times we spoke too soon.
Or the times we didn't negotiate for what we were worth because we didn't think we deserved it.
All of it. And this creates this deeply embedded insecurity that becomes the foundation, the operating system for our current behavior.
It's a limiting operating system. If you identify with your past failures, you're going to approach the next big challenge timidly. You'll underprepare because subconsciously, you expect to fail.
Which then leads to mediocre or poor results, which then reinforces the original belief. See, I knew it. I knew I was inadequate. It's the classic self-fulfilling prophecy, and it locks our potential in a cage built from our own history.
But this external vision, what Moore calls the divine perception, it's listing entirely different identities. It's not see the guy who messed up the Q3 report.
No, it sees a warrior, it sees a deliverer, a voice of change.
These are all roles of action, of leadership, of transformation. My self-view sees a historical artifact, a museum piece of past mistakes. This external vision sees a potential engine of immense force.
And the difference between those two visions is what you choose to rehearse.
That's such a critical point. The power of language and belief. The source is basically challenging us. Stop rehearsing your fears and start receiving your future identity.
We don't often realize the profound impact our internal narration has on our physical and professional output. If I'm constantly narrating internally, I am an imposter, I don't belong here, that label becomes the filter through which I interpret all external data.
So even if my boss gives me praise, my imposter filter will twist it into, well, he's just being nice, he doesn't know the truth.
Precisely. And this is where the devotional text intersects really powerfully with what's known as labeling theory in psychology. If an authoritative positive label is applied externally by a mentor, or in this case, the divine psychology, it forces a change in the internal dialogue.
And eventually that leads to a change in behavior.
Right, because you start trying to live up to the new label, not the old one.
But the source makes it very clear that you don't have to wait for the feeling to catch up. You don't have to feel powerful to be powerful.
That's the leap of faith, isn't it? The declaration is presented as an objective truth that is, and this is a direct quote, more accurate than your self-perception.
That is an enormous ask. It requires us to suspend our own empirical judgment, our own lived experience, in favor of a declarative statement from an outside source.
And that suspension, that difficulty, is precisely why Gideon's resistance is so valuable for us to analyze. He immediately models every single excuse and defense mechanism we use when we're confronted with a potential that feels too big or, undeserved.
He's the poster child for imposter syndrome.
A perfect model. Let's break down his excuses because they are just universal. When the emissary says mighty warrior, Gideon's response is this cascade of reasons why they've got the wrong guy.
First, he just deflects, right? He tries to change the subject.
Totally. First, it's evasion and deflection. Woo, me! If the Lord is with us, then why has all this bad stuff happened? He's questioning the entire premise. He's trying to shift the focus from his capability to the miserable state of the world around him.
He's basically saying, the label can't be true because my environment is so awful. It's a classic externalization of the problem.
Then comes the ultimate self-minimization, the family and social excuses. He says his clan is the weakest in his tribe, Manasseh, and then on top of that, he is the least in his family.
He's just stacking the deck of inadequacy. It's like he's saying, you don't understand my background. I come from nothing. My resume is blank.
He is rejecting the label because it doesn't align with his history. This confirms that the greatest challenge to a transformative calling isn't usually the difficulty of the task itself.
It's the immediate crisis of self-belief.
That's it. These are the classic signs of feeling ordinary, invisible, and completely underqualified when a major professional or personal task lands on your desk.
So if the greeting, the calling, is about potential, then the requirement for fulfilling that potential can't be based on existing capability.
It can't be. The source simplifies this beautifully. It says, God doesn't need a resume, he needs a yes.
That's a liberating shift, isn't it? It moves the whole conversation away from technical skills, from experience, from resources.
And it focuses purely on willingness, on consent. If Gideon had to be qualified in the traditional sense, he would have been up on that windy hill, bold and confident, not hiding in a pit. His qualification was simply the capacity to eventually say yes to a label that defied his reality.
The implication for us today, then, is that this principle is timeless. We are all, in our own ways, called to do extraordinary things. Launch the company, write the book, lead the department, fix that broken relationship.
But we spend months, sometimes years, dodging that call because we feel ordinary, we feel underqualified.
And the source is saying the qualification process is backwards from how we think it works.
Yeah.
You don't get qualified before you say yes. You become qualified by saying yes.
It demands an identity shift first. The prerequisite for fulfilling the destiny is abandoning the narrative of the past, the failures, the fear, the family dynamics, and just agreeing to operate under this new, unexpected, authoritative label.
That decision to simply trust the external vision over your own internal limiting memory, that's the primary hurdle.
It's the whole game. It's the psychological and behavioral hurdle we have to overcome.
But wait, this brings up a really crucial, challenging point. We have to address this head on. If we're told to ignore our past and only focus on some external declaration of potential, how do we make sure this doesn't just lead to, unrealistic expectations or even self-delusion?
That is an excellent and necessary challenge.
I mean, when does ignoring the past become dangerous, professionally or personally?
I have no experience as a surgeon, but I feel called to be one.
Right. And Moore's work and the devotional context, it does provide a counterpoint to simple self-delusion. It's not advocating for some kind of self-help fantasy. It's demanding an alignment with an existing authoritative vision.
Okay, so the difference is the authority of the label. I think so. If this were just generic, positive thinking, I'm going to tell myself I'm a CEO until I am one, it would quickly shatter against reality. But if a supportive mentor, a coach, an organization sees genuine, untapped potential in you,
the mighty warrior skill set that you actually possess but are too afraid to use.
Precisely. In that case, the label is accurate. It's not a hallucination of skill. It's an act of discovery, not invention. The power of the external vision is that it identifies what you are actually capable of, even if your fear has hidden it from you. It holds up a mirror to your true capability.
So the shift isn't reckless. It's a recalibration. You're recalibrating to an identity that is supposedly more factual than your current fear-based self-assessment.
Exactly. And that alignment, that recalibration, it starts with actively and consciously shifting the labels we choose to wear.
Okay, so that's the perfect transition. We have to focus now on the practical mechanism. How do we actually make this identity shift?
We have to go back to the core principle. Sometimes God speaks to our potential, not our past. The driver is potential. Now we need the vehicle to get us there.
And that vehicle is the conscious replacement of those negative, self-imposed labels.
Before we can put on the new labels, we have to deconstruct the false identities we've been operating under. We need to do an audit, identify those names we've internalized that were never given by any affirming vision, whether you call that divine or just, objective, positive, external validation.
Where do these labels even come from?
We absorb them from negative experiences, from criticisms, from society's judgment, or, and this is the most common one, from our own self-talk after we make a mistake.
So if I get laid off from a job, I might adopt the label unreliable or not good enough.
If a creative project fails to get funding, you internalize failure. If you struggle with finances, you become less than. These labels are the shackles of the past. The source highlights 3 big ones that people respond to most often: fear, failure, and forgotten.
And these labels are so insidious because they act like internal gatekeepers, don't they? The moment you accept failure as a core part of your identity, you instinctively start screening out opportunities that carry any risk.
Thereby guaranteeing the label remains true. It's another feedback loop. To step into the identity of the warrior, we need a complete replacement strategy.
And the source material gives us one. It's a powerful reframing exercise designed to strip away those limiting historical names and replace them with future-oriented ones. This is the actionable core of this whole deep dive.
It is. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Okay, so let's break down the first transformation. This is the one that seems to enable all the others. The shift from fear-faithful.
Fear, as we saw so vividly with Gideon, is paralyzing. It stops action. It makes you hide the wheat in the winepress.
It makes you play small.
Exactly. Faithfulness in this context isn't about religious belief necessarily. It's about consistent, potential-driven action, even when the outcome is totally uncertain. It's a professional shift from analysis paralysis to strategic, albeit nervous, obedience to the calling.
So it doesn't mean the fear magically vanishes.
Not at all. It means you act despite the fear, you feel the fear and do it anyway. Faithfulness is the antidote to the paralysis of fear.
Okay, let's make that super practical. How does a listener apply this, say, professionally? I'm launching a new product line at my company, and I'm terrified of market failure. How do I shift from fear to faithfulness in that scenario?
It means consciously shifting your focus from the result to the process and the vision. A fearful entrepreneur focuses on the worst-case scenario. What if I lose all the investment? What if no one buys it? What if I get fired?
Right, you catastrophize.
A faithful entrepreneur, one who is choosing to accept the mighty warrior label, focuses on the inherent value of the idea and their commitment to excellent execution. It means submitting the proposal even though you feel a tremor in your hand.
So it's about the daily decisions. It's choosing to show up.
It's choosing to show up, regardless of whether you got a congratulatory email yesterday or a scathing critique last month. Your faithfulness is to the potential you're trying to realize, not to your mood of the day.
I like that. Okay, let's move to the second one. This one might be the hardest for people to really internalize. The shift from failure, forgiven.
It's a tough one, because failure is a historical event. It's a data point, and we allow that data point to assign a permanent label to our entire being.
If I made a huge mistake on a project last year that cost the company time and money, I don't just say, I failed.
Yeah.
I start to believe I am a failure.
You internalize the incident as who you are. Forgiveness, as it's presented here, is the mechanism that allows that historical event to be neutralized. It cuts the cord between the past mistake and your present self.
This is so crucial for professional development. I mean, we all have gaps on our CVs, layoffs, maybe a business that went under, or just a massive public blunder.
Everyone does.
And if I constantly rehearse the story of the time I royally screwed up, I'm going to walk into my next job interview carrying the weight of that failure. So how do I professionally forgive myself and move on from that?
You have to consciously rewrite the narrative of the event. Instead of the story being, I failed at that project, you reframe it. The new story is, that project provided crucial data that allowed me to refine my approach to X, Y, and Z.
So the failure becomes a component of your experience, not the definition of your character.
Yes. The label forgiven means that the mistake, while you acknowledge it, no longer has the authority to dictate your present capability or your self-worth. It transforms a fixed identity marker, a tombstone, into a dynamic learning opportunity, a stepping stone.
That makes the identity dynamic rather than fixed. That's what you need to get out of the wine press. Okay, on to the third shift. This one addresses that feeling of invisibility so many of us experience. The shift from forgotten favored.
Feeling forgotten. It means feeling invisible, overlooked, not important enough to matter. This leads directly to self-minimization. Gideon's entire identity, the least of the least, was rooted in feeling forgotten by God and by his powerful ancestors.
The label favored, on the other hand, suggests inherent value. It suggests being specifically chosen for a purpose. It directly addresses that deep-seated sense of being underqualified or unworthy of attention.
In the modern workplace, this translates to knowing your inherent worth. If you feel forgotten, you don't speak up in meetings, even when you have the solution. You accept a lower salary because you feel lucky just to have a job. You downplay your own successes.
You minimize your contributions. Oh, it was nothing, or it was a team effort, even when you did 90% of the work.
Exactly. Embracing the favored identity is the requirement for self-advocacy. It means walking into that salary negotiation based on the potential value you will bring to the company, not just on the lowball offer you think you can get away with.
It means walking into the meeting knowing your opinion has value, regardless of your job title.
It's the total rejection of self-minimization. It's the acceptance of an intrinsic, unearned competence and worthiness.
So if we accept these three powerful replacements, faithful, forgiven, and favored, the ultimate conclusion about our self-worth becomes, well, unavoidable.
It does. Your identity is explicitly not rooted in your personal history, not in your worst days or your most embarrassing moments.
It is rooted entirely in the vision for your future.
And this requires active participation from us. It demands that we stop looking backwards at the limitations of yesterday and start looking forward at the potential described in that greeting, mighty warrior, deliverer, voice of change, and allow those future labels to define our actions today.
This brings us right back to the practical application question posed by Moore's work. We've covered the theology, the psychology, the identity shift. This is where the rubber really meets the road for the listener.
The practical application question that every single one of us has to answer is this. What has been calling you to action? That business idea, that difficult conversation you need to have, that leadership role you were offered, that you've been actively dodging because you don't feel qualified.
We all have one. Or maybe 5. And we often dodge these calls by pointing to a lack of resources, right? I don't have the funds, I don't have the time, I don't have the experience.
But that's just Gideon saying, my clan is the weakest and I'm the least of the least. It's the same excuse, just in modern language.
So what's the solution?
The source argues that accepting the call means choosing to operate from the identity of the mighty warrior before the first step is even logically possible. It means acting like the deliverer before the army is assembled.
It requires rejecting all those self-imposed qualification requirements.
And accepting the one single requirement.
Yeah.
Willingness. That is the true power of prioritizing potential over history. You have to act as if the external label is already true.
You act as if you are already favored, so you speak up. You act as if you're already forgiven, so you take a calculated risk.
Think about the moment Gideon had to actually leave the wine press. That first small step, just leaving the pit, that was the first action of the mighty warrior. It wasn't leading an army of 30,000. It was simply walking out into the daylight.
We need to identify our own wine press, that place of comfort or fear or self-pity that we're hiding in.
And take the first small potential line step out of it this week. That's the challenge.
That brings us completely full circle. We started with Gideon hiding in utter defeat, being labeled something completely contrary to his reality. And we conclude with this mandate to step out, to start acting in congruence with that impossible, powerful label.
This deep dive has really been about the transformative power of external identity reframing. We started with that foundational text, Judges 6.1, and the affirmation that just cuts right through fear. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior.
And the power of that phrase, it's not just a nice sentiment. It's a command. Walk in it. Own it. Believe it. It's a spiritual imperative that honestly serves as the highest form of cognitive behavioral therapy. You embody the potential you've been shown.
And the devotional context really reinforces this idea of proactive identity acceptance. It encourages this intentionality, this sense of thanking a higher authority for calling us by who we are becoming, not by who we were in our darkest, most fearful moments.
And I think it's crucial that it doesn't just ignore the struggle. It's not about pretending to be perfect. The source material includes this honest acknowledgement that we need help. We need help to respond in obedience instead of fear.
And that we need strength when we feel weak. This isn't about an instant, effortless transformation. It's about acknowledging the gap between your current self and your potential self.
But still choosing to operate under the greater, future-oriented narrative.
It's the synthesis of potential and humility. You accept the magnitude of the calling while acknowledging the current reality of your limitations, but you choose the high road, the road defined by your capability, not your history.
So we'll leave you with a final provocative thought, something to really chew on, derived from this deep dive into Moore's analysis. If your potential is truly your authentic identity, what is the cost? Not just to your future, but to your professional and personal integrity of continuing to live today according to a false limiting label based on a history that has already been dismissed.
That decision to live truthfully, aligning your actions with your mighty potential instead of your fearful past. That is the immediate, profound application of this knowledge. Stop hiding the wheat in the winepress. Your time is now.
And for those of you who wish to explore this rich source material further, these empowering concepts and quotes are drawn from the work of William Moore. Specifically, it's From Ordinary to Extraordinary, 33 motivational quotes from Judges 6.1 Pell.
Find the resources, continue to challenge your self-perception, and just remember the choice you face every single morning when you wake up.
Remember, you're not who you used to be. You're who God says you are. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into seeing potential, not past. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us today on From Manuscript to Ministry. If today's featured book encouraged, challenged, or inspired you, we invite you to take the next step, purchase a copy, and support the author behind the message. When you invest in their work, you're not just buying a book, you're sowing into good ground and helping advance the kingdom of God through faith-filled storytelling. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. Your support helps these powerful voices reach even further. Until next time, keep reading, keep writing, keep praying, and keep walking boldly in your calling. God is still turning manuscripts into ministries.